I sat on the rolling stool in my garage with a cheap beer sweating onto the concrete, trying to get a 10mm socket to bite. The ratchet kept sticking, like it wanted to hold on to the same bad moment. My knuckles were already raw, and it was still Sunday. Monday at 9 a.m., I had to sit in a white room with HR and safety and explain why a man went down on my shift. I had promised myself my whole life I would never be like my old man. No screaming, no freezing people out until they apologized for whatever he imagined. No turning love into a locked door. Then, Friday night, in my kitchen, my son spilled juice and I heard my own mouth say the exact sentence my father used to drop on me like a hammer. The words left, and something inside me clicked into place like a latch. At the warehouse, I ran maintenance for third shift at a distribution center outside Dayton. It was all fluorescent hum and pallet jacks and guys trying to make it to morning without their backs giving out. Friday at 2:07 a.m., a forklift clipped a stack of shrink-wrapped cases, and the whole thing slid like ice. Don Parker hit the concrete hard enough that the sound shut everybody up. By the time the ambulance doors closed, my shirt was stuck to me with sweat and burnt coffee, and all I could think about was Monday at 9 a.m. I told my wife, Jenna, I was going to the garage to fix the lawnmower, like that mattered. She stood in the doorway with her hair up, and that tired look you only get after too many broken promises. "You coming to bed?" "In a minute." The beer tasted like pennies. I went back to my toolbox and slid out the folded timecard printout I'd grabbed from the office printer at the end of shift. It was supposed to be a lifeline, proof I'd been where I said I was when the crash happened. I smoothed the paper with my thumb, staring at the numbers like I could will them into behaving. My phone buzzed on the workbench. An email from HR, subject line all caps polite. I opened the attachment, and the timecard wasn't the one I printed. It was an audit report with my employee ID stamped next to a single line. Time adjustment created 2:13 a.m. The audit report sat on my screen with my number beside 2:13 a.m., and my stomach had dropped like a loose bolt. I had told myself the timecard printout would save me, and now it looked like a rope. I drove to the warehouse before sunrise because Monday at 9 a.m. didn't care if I was tired or scared. The parking lot was empty except for a couple semis idling at the docks, their exhaust making slow ghosts. Inside, the hallway lights made everything look sickly. My badge felt wrong in my hand. There was sticker residue on the back where an old label had been peeled, and it kept catching on my thumb like a warning. I went straight to the maintenance cage and popped the lock. The air smelled like oil and cardboard, and the lemon cleaner the day shift used. I told myself I was just checking. Just making sure the camera footage matched the story. Just making sure nobody was going to pin Don's fall on me. I tried to keep my breathing quiet as I walked the aisle where it happened. The skid marks were still there, black arcs on the concrete. Somebody had already restacked the cases, but the corner guardrail had a fresh scuff like a bruise. In the office, I pulled up the security viewer on the old desktop that always took 2 tries to wake. My hands shook enough that I had to click twice. The camera over aisle 14 showed the forklift lane and a sliver of the dock door. The footage was grainy, but you could see bodies move when the stack started to go. The timestamp in the corner read 2:07 a.m. I leaned closer, trying to make out faces, trying to decide what truth I could live with by Monday at 9 a.m. The mouse froze. The computer lagged. I felt sweat gather under my arms. I reached into my pocket for the small jumper plug I'd used earlier in the week to test a sensor. My fingers found nothing. I checked the other pocket, then the one inside my hoodie, and a cold line ran up my back. In the truck afterward, I sat with my hands on the steering wheel, staring at the empty passenger seat where my son's booster sat during school runs. The quiet beat didn't feel peaceful. It felt like waiting for a punch. I rubbed the timecard printout between my fingers until the paper warmed, then folded it tighter. My phone rang. It was Marco, the kid we'd hired 6 months ago, all restless energy and excuses. I didn't answer. He called again and again until my screen lit up with a text. He wrote, "You talk to them, and I swear I'll tell them you were on the lift. Monday 9, don't forget." Marco's threat sat in my messages like a loaded tool on the edge of a bench. I had walked into the warehouse to get ahead of Monday at 9 a.m., and I walked out with a kid daring me to take the fall. Sunday afternoon, Jenna tried to act normal, which somehow made it worse. She cleaned the kitchen like she could scrub the weekend away. I kept hearing my father's voice in the back of my skull, that cold certainty he used when he wanted everyone else to carry his shame. I kept my own voice low, careful, like volume alone could decide what kind of man I was. At 6:30 p.m., I drove back to the warehouse for the scheduled pre-meeting with safety. The email said it was optional. Nothing about this felt optional with Monday at 9 a.m., waiting like a judge. The conference room smelled like dry erase markers and stale air. A stack of forms sat in the center of the table, and on top was my timecard printout, unfolded like someone had been reading it. Kara from HR was there, hair perfect, eyes tired. Beside her sat a safety guy named Nichols with forearms like he lifted pallets for fun. He didn't smile. He just tapped the paper with one finger, like it was an animal he'd caught. "I appreciate you coming in early." I sat down and kept my hands under the table so they wouldn't shake. "We need to understand the timeline." Nichols slid the time card toward me. "This is your printout?" "Yeah." "You said you were in the office at 2:07. "I was." Kara leaned forward, voice soft in a way that made my skin crawl. "Then help me with this. Why does the audit show a time adjustment created at 2:13? "That doesn't mean anything?" Nichols tilted his head, like he'd heard that line before. "It means someone changed something." I felt heat rise in my neck. I remembered my father at our kitchen table, telling me facts didn't matter, only what he could make people believe. "You're making a problem out of nothing." The words hit the room and hung there. Kara blinked once, slow. Kara didn't argue. She just opened a folder and pulled out another sheet, thicker paper with a barcode. She slid it across to me, and I saw the header. Time Clock Admin Log. Under it was my employee ID again, with admin access granted beside it, and a line that made my mouth go dry. Badge swipe. Location, maintenance office. Nichols watched my face, then stood and paced to the window, looking out at the empty docks like he was giving me space to choose what kind of lie to keep. I swallowed hard and tried to think of a clean story. My father would have gone quiet right then, let the silence do the violence for him. I forced myself to breathe. Kara said my name like it mattered. "Did you edit your time card after the incident?" Nichols turned back, voice flat. "Because if you did, that's tampering." My tongue felt too big for my mouth. I managed to nod once, small, like a bolt turning. Kara's shoulders sagged, not angry, just disappointed. "Why, Ryan?" I stared at the paper until the numbers blurred. I was trying to fix it. Nichols leaned in, close enough that I could smell his coffee. "Fix what, exactly?" Kara's pen hovered over the form, waiting. "Who were you fixing it for?" I didn't answer. My jaw locked. My father used to do that too, like refusing to speak was a kind of power. I hated the familiarity of it. Nichols straightened, decision made. "Then we're done here. Monday 9 a.m., formal meeting. Security will escort you in." Kara gathered the papers without looking at me. "Do not access any systems between now and then." I walked out with my ears ringing. In the hallway, the fluorescent hum sounded like a warning siren that never peaked. In my truck, I sat with my hands on the wheel and stared at my dashboard until my eyes burned. Monday at 9 a.m. was coming no matter what I did. When I finally reached for my key, something brushed my knuckles. There was a strip of blue painter's tape stuck to the steering wheel, and under it was the little jumper plug I'd been missing, dangling like a tooth. A note was folded around it, written in block letters. "Found this in aisle 14. The jumper plug was taped to my steering wheel, with a note that said it was found in aisle 14. I had walked into the meeting thinking I could control the story, and now the story had my fingerprints on it, with Monday at 9 a.m. circling closer. I drove home with the plug in my pocket like it was radioactive. The sun had gone down, and the neighborhood was all porch lights and muted TVs behind curtains. Inside, Jenna was on the couch with her feet tucked under her, a blanket over her legs like armor. She didn't look up from the muted screen until I stood there too long. The silence between us felt trained, inherited. My father was a master of that kind of silence. He could make a room apologize to him without saying a word. I hated that I knew how to do it too. Jenna turned the TV off and set the remote down carefully. "Tell me you didn't do it." My throat tightened. I could have lied. I could have done what my father always did and let someone else carry it. I thought about my son asleep down the hall, the way he watched my face when I spoke, like he was learning a language. I did. Jenna didn't cry. That almost broke me more than yelling would have. She just nodded once, slow, like she was filing it away for later. Monday at 9 a.m. meant losing my job, maybe more. It meant insurance. It meant my son's inhaler refills. It meant telling my mother, who still made excuses for my father like they were prayers. It also meant Don Parker, who was still in a hospital bed because of what happened under my watch. I went to the kitchen sink and ran the water. I washed my hands even though they weren't dirty, scrubbing until my skin went pink. The water didn't change anything. The quiet beat made my chest ache. Jenna stayed on the couch, listening without looking. At 11:40 p.m., I went back to the garage. The same beer from earlier was warm now, forgotten on the workbench. I didn't drink it. I pulled the timecard printout out of my wallet and laid it flat beside the jumper plug. The paper looked harmless. The plug looked like nothing. Together, they were my whole life about to tilt. I wrote a statement in my own handwriting, slow and plain. I didn't mention Marco's name yet. I didn't try to be noble. I just wrote what I had done. The edit, the plug, the decision to keep the line moving. Every sentence felt like lifting weight with a bad back. At 12:22 a.m., I drove to the warehouse. The place was dark except for security lights. I parked near the employee entrance and walked up to the HR drop box by the door, the metal cold under my fingertips. Monday at 9 a.m. would be here in less than 9 hours. I slid the statement in first, then the time card printout, then the jumper plug, and I let the slot clap shut before I could change my mind. I had dropped my confession, the time card printout, and the jumper plug into the HR box, and the metal slot had snapped closed. There was no pulling it back out. And Monday at 9 a.m. was waiting for me like it had teeth. At 8:12 a.m., Jenna drove while I stared out the passenger window at wet streets and gray sky. My son sat behind me, quiet, his sneakers tapping once in a while against the back of my seat. The courthouse-looking HR building came into view, and my stomach tightened. In the garage the night before, I'd kept telling myself this was about not becoming my father. In truth, it was also about what I'd already done. Friday night, I had been the one who pulled the speed limiter fuse off that forklift. Not because it was broken, because we were behind and I wanted to look like the hero who caught us up. Marco wasn't drunk or wild, just exhausted. Eyes glassy from whatever he took to stay upright. I saw it and pretended I didn't. When Don stepped into the lane with his clipboard, everything happened fast and stupid. After the ambulance left, I printed the time card and edited the log to make it look cleaner, safer, like time itself could be rearranged. In the parking lot before I got out, my son leaned forward between the seats, his breath warm near my ear. "Please don't yell." That line landed like a hand on my chest. I nodded without trusting my voice. At 8:59 a.m., security walked me into the room. Kara was there. Nichols was there. A manager I'd never met sat with a folder already thick. They didn't ask for drama. They asked for details. When I gave them Marco's name, it felt like swallowing broken glass, but it was the first thing that sounded like truth in days. I didn't get arrested. I did get walked out. They suspended me pending investigation, which was corporate language for, "You're done, we just have to do the paperwork." Jenna didn't talk on the drive home. I didn't try to fill the silence. I let it be what it was without turning it into a weapon. That night, I went back into the garage and sat on the rolling stool again. The same ratchet still stuck, and I still had to force it loose with both hands. I set the time card printout under a magnet on the side of the toolbox, not as a lifeline anymore, just a receipt. The beer was cold this time, and I didn't drink fast. I kept working the ratchet until it finally clicked free, and the sound didn't feel like a latch closing. It felt like something opening.